How do you do? This is Clive Brook. A few years ago, I heard a young man sing a song I always remember. Immaculately dressed in a top hat, tails, and leaning on a cane, he described in each verse one of those people we all know so well and dislike so much. You know, the bore, the backslapper, the life of the party type of man. When the refrain came round, the singer would screw his monocle in his eye and say in a very tired voice, "So, I murdered him last Thursday." Then another verse, the description of another bore, and again the refrain, "I murdered him last Thursday." I remember the audience was delighted and fully approved of the murders. But that was a song in a musical comedy. In real life, that you will say is a very different cup of tea. Is it? Are you sure? Could an ordinary, normal, decent man be so provoked and goaded that he would deliberately plan and carry out a murder in cold blood? I don't know, but this week's casebook history intrigues me, since it has considerable bearing on the possibility of such a crime. I've called it The Case of the Lady in Distress. The Lady in Distress. Such an attractive lady, so pretty, so full of life, and such a good companion. And when she liked you, she could give so much and take so little. Her name was Molly Jackson, and she lived with her husband Tom in a bungalow called The Mumbles in Swansea, Wales. Mrs. Jackson's closest friend was her next-door neighbor, a Mrs. Edith Dimmick. These two ladies had a passion in common, the cinema, a visit to which was their invariable Thursday habit. Now, February the 4th, 1929 was a Thursday, and on that particular night they had, as usual, been to the movies, enjoyed themselves immensely, and as they walked back to their homes...
Oh, I do think that Ron Coleman's wonderful, don't you, Edith? Oh, Molly, what I'd do to be in a love scene with him. Oh, what would our husbands say if they could hear us? Oh, and your mind could do with a little instruction from one of these film stars. There's no romance left these days except in films. Don't you find that, Molly? Oh, I don't know. Can't complain about my Tom. He's pretty good at husband's girl. Don't forget, if everything was so glamorous in real life, there wouldn't be any point in going to the pictures. I'd hate that. Oh, I wouldn't miss them for the world. I suppose you're right. Still, I'd like to see more romance. Here's your house. I wonder why they called it The Mumbles. Tom was saying this morning that there's so much noise that when one goes up the stairs, we ought to change the name of the school. Oh, I see he's put the light out. I'll have to creep about in the dark. He hates to be woken up. Well, you know, it's been ever so pleasant. Next Thursday, all right for you. Rather, it's Douglas Fairbank. Oh, I adore him. But what about Ronald Coleman? I can adore them both, can't I? After all, I only see them on the screen. Worse luck. Good night, Molly. Good night.
The scream came from Mrs. Jackson. Yes. She'd been murdered. Who murdered her? And why was she murdered? To answer such a question, one would have to go back in time to find out what her life was before she came to Swansea with her husband, when she wasn't married, but was plain... No, she was never plain. When she was just Molly Bourne, with a country accent she wasn't always successful in hiding. Let us join in one of the typical incidents that made up Molly's life. It is the year 1914. The scene, a crowded cafe in Charing Cross Road at tea time.
Oh, I beg your pardon, but would you mind if I shared your table?
Please do. It's very crowded in here today, isn't it?
Yes, it is a bit full. Oh, waitress! Coming, madam.
That's clever. I've been trying to catch her eye for ages.
Tea for two, bread and butter, scones, jam, cakes.
Yes, please.
Just a cup of tea for me, please. Very good, madam. I suppose you always have a big tea.
Well, just the usual, you know.
I wish I could afford just the usual. Right nowadays, it's a great luxury for me to buy even a cup of tea.
Oh, I'm sorry. You suddenly didn't give the impression that one of these...
that what you say? Oh, but I am. I'm at the last gasp, really. I don't know what to eat for the next meal.
Come now, look, we can't have you crying. Can't be as bad as all that. Could it help you at all to tell me about it?
Oh, very kind. I could tell by your face that you're a sympathetic sort of person. You're quite right, I must stop this cry. I must try to be brave. If it really I'm in the most terrible plight, ask him to pay me, not to pay me. You two know he's out of work. He's a clerk and he hasn't enough money to keep body and soul together, let alone help me. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it's really wicked of me to make such an exhibition of myself.
No, I understand. I was just thinking what my wife would say if I didn't give her a big enough allowance.
Oh, you're married?
Yes, with 2 kids. Fine regrets there are too. Luckily I've got a good job and they don't lack for anything.
Oh, but then I should think you were a sort of man to marry without good prospects. You look the responsible type to me.
Yes, most people think we're pretty responsible. My boss does anyway. Look here, I'm going to buy you a big slap-up meal. I went to the Louis Rose myself once. I know what it's like to have an empty stomach. Here, waitress.
Coming, sir.
And in the following months, Molly, who incidentally was not married, was bought many slap-up meals and other things. The man was not boasting. He was in quite a responsible position. In fact, he was in charge of the trust funds of a miners' trade union. His friendship with Molly Bourne was quite happy until one day Smith, we'd better call him, was suddenly brought up with a dote.
Oh, Eddie, dearest, the dressmaker's been worrying about this bill. I promised to let her have the money this week. Would you send her a check?
Of course, Molly. Let's see the bill. But Molly, this says...
Whatever's the matter, dearest?
This can't be right. When you looked at it, it says £1,350.
Yes, I know. Perhaps it does seem rather a lot. But you know what my clothes are like when you first saw me.
But, Molly, I can't pay this. I've a wife and 2 kids. You forget that I've already spent a good $500 on you.
Oh, really, Eddie? I hope you're not going to be difficult. Sure, you can borrow. You're in a responsible position in a trade union. And...
I'm already in debt because of you, Molly. I can't go on this way.
What are you going to do? That bill's got to be paid.
I'm afraid it'll have to wait. I can't possibly afford it at the moment. Perhaps in a few months.
Eddie. Oh, Eddie. You're going to make me hate myself.
What do you mean?
I'm going to hate saying this. You seem to have forgotten. Has it ever occurred to you, Eddie, that some people, the nasty sort, might take a suspicious view of our friendship?
What are you getting at?
Oh, dear. Do I have to make it plainer? What would your trusting employers think of our relationship?
Nothing to do with them.
Well, then, wouldn't your wife? Mightn't your wife get the wrong idea?
Molly, you wouldn't...
Before that check shall be made out to the dressmaker's shop. The name is at the top of the bill.
That was only the beginning. As the weeks went by, Molly Bourne's requests became more and larger. Determined to keep the secret from his wife at all costs, the frantic victim started using the trust funds of his trade union to satisfy his lady friend's demands. Molly found this out and from then on had 2 weapons in her hands. Smith got deeper and deeper until finally, as they always will, the police caught up with him. He was arrested, put on trial for misappropriating the funds of his union, £20,000 worth. The case went to the Central Criminal Court and Smith was given 5 years penal servitude. Now you see why I called him Smith. He may still be living, and I doubt whether he wants to be reminded of the case. But what of Molly Bourne? Didn't she suffer too for her part in this rather sickening story? The answer to that question lies in the newspapers of the time. There you will see the case referred to as the Madam X case. Nowhere in it was Molly mentioned by name. The police thought that by preserving her anonymity, they might obtain restitution of part of the money from her. Smith could have told them that they might just as well have expected blood from a stone. And so, Molly went scot-free. You remember that this is 1914, and the war was by no means a setback to her. The rather free and easy social conditions of wartime London helping rather than hindering her career. One evening, just after the war, he was dining in a restaurant in the Strand.
Oh, I do beg your pardon, but I must ask you something.
Certainly, madam. What is it you want to know?
Well, weren't you at the Earl of Selby's Christmas party last year?
Earl of Selby? Sorry, no, you're mistaking me for someone else. I've never heard of the Earl of Selby.
Oh, I could have sworn I met you there. you sure you don't remember me? My name's Molly Blanding.
I'm Thomas Ingram.
Strange, you know. I rarely make mistakes about people. In my work, one has to be very observant. I'm a writer. One of the things I pride myself on is that I never forget a face. Obviously, I've been deceiving myself.
Well, I expect there are quite a number of men who look like me. There's nothing very original about my features.
I don't agree with you there. I can tell one thing, though. I'm not a Londoner.
Well, that's true. How did you know?
Something about the way you hold yourself. You want to visit?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm out on a sort of celebration with a few pals of mine. You see, we've just got out of the army, and they're supposed to be meeting me here.
Oh, I see.
And when the knock in the pattern to them, they said 8 o'clock, and it's already 1:15.
His friends never turned up, and Thomas Jackson, sporting the alias of Ingram while in London, took Molly Blanding, alias Bourne, to the pictures. As we know, Molly was an attractive woman, and both parties took great pleasure in each other's company. In the weeks that followed, they became almost inseparable. Facing up to the fact that he could not on his meager bank account entertain Molly in the way to which he seemed accustomed, Jackson soon let her generous nature have its way, and allowed himself to be paid for wherever they went. Now, in view of this, it was not surprising that when Molly made him a certain proposition one day, he accepted with alacrity.
Tom, dear, I'll be leaving London next week. I'm going down to my place in the country.
Oh, I'm sorry about that, Molly. I miss you.
I was wondering, Tom, there'd been in need of you to miss me.
How do you mean?
Well, we get on very well together, don't we? And I've got enough money for two to live on very comfortably. But I wondered if you... Oh, dear. Really, I'm not used to making proposals. Will you marry me, Tom?
You know the answer to that, Molly, darling. Oh, you made me so happy.
Mr. and Mrs. Ingram.
Oh, yes. I'd better tell you now. For some reason, when we met, I said my name was Ingram. Actually, it's Jackson.
I know, dear. I saw your army discharge papers, but I prefer Ingram. Sounds more distinguished than Jackson, don't you think?
Well, yes, I suppose so.
And I'd be very happy if you promote yourself to captain.
But, Molly...
Oh, no, Tom. You mustn't argue with me. I like the sound of it, darling. It suits our position in society. Captain and Mrs. Ingram.
No one could say that our Molly was old-fashioned. But what was her game? What could she hope to get from the relatively poor Mr. Jackson, Captain Ingram? Would she try to blackmail him in some way? What was her object in marrying him? Was this another of her evil exploits? And if so, how long was she to continue unpunished? When would the past catch up with Molly Bourne? Perhaps what Molly Bourne had been working for all these years was enough money to marry whom she liked, no matter what his income. Thomas Jackson's means were practically non-existent, but this detracted in no way from the happiness of their married life. But to get on with our story. Having visited most of the fashionable resorts of England in grand style, the Jacksons, or rather the Ingrams, decided to visit Tom's parents, who lived in Swansea, Wales.
You can get people who like me, Tom.
Of course they will, Molly. I've written them all about you already and told them how happy we are. But you know, this England business is going to be a bit difficult to explain.
Oh, don't worry about that, Tom. We'll be married again in the name of Jackson.
Are you sure you don't mind, dear?
Well, of course not. The first thing we'll do when we reach Cardiff. We will go on to Swansea under no false pretenses.
And if you like Swansea, you'll be willing to settle down there?
Yes, darling. I want to grow some roots somewhere. I've travelled enough in my life.
I thought, if you like the place, mind, I thought I might get some sort of job. I feel I ought to do something.
You don't have to, you know, Tom. There's still plenty of money in the bank. You know, what sort of work did you have in mind?
Oh, just something to keep me occupied. I was billiards champion in my outfit during the war, you know. I thought I might try my hand as a professional.
You know, There's no harm in it. Anyway, don't let's cross our bridges. I know hate Swansea.
But Molly Jackson did not hate Swansea. She loved it. She bought a house called the Mumbles, and for 7 happy years she and Tom lived a respectable and uneventful life there. Then one evening she went to the movies with a neighbor, a Mrs. Edith Dimmick. And on their way home, as you may remember...
Yeah, that's so pleasant. Next Thursday, all right for you. Rather. It's Douglas Fairbanks. Oh, I adore him. What about Ronald Colman? I can adore them both, can't I? After all, I only see them on the screen. Worse luck. Good night, Molly. Good night. Mr. Jackson, whatever happened? I thought it was Molly. Just let me 10 seconds ago. What happened?
Hello, Mrs. Dimmick. I can't tell you what happened, I'm afraid. I heard the scream came straight down to find Molly lying here outside the back door. Will you help me?
Of course.
I want to lift her inside, onto the sofa in the drawing room.
I wish that dog would stop barking.
Hold it gently, will you? I don't want to shake it at all. Can you keep that door shut behind you? It's rather cold.
Right you are. Poor dear, she looks badly hurt. On this sofa. There we are. Have you got something to bathe these cuts?
Yes. Shouldn't we try to bring her round?
Well, let's take her coat off first. Looks as if she pulled it up around her head to protect herself.
If you'll hold her in a sitting position, then I'll take it off without disturbing her too much.
Oh, Mr. Jackson, you don't want to say you do. These cuts look rather bad. Wasn't what you call the doctor?
Oh. Do you think so? I'd rather not, if it can be avoided.
I really think she ought to be looked at professionally.
Very well. Will you phone for him? The phone's on the desk over there. Meanwhile, I'll try and bring her round.
But Mr. Jackson failed to revive his wife. She was taken to hospital where she died without having once regained consciousness. The police were notified, and Detective Wright of Swansea searched the Jackson house. He then had a little chat with the unhappy Mr. Jackson.
Now, Mr. Jackson, you mustn't mind my asking you a few questions. You said I think that you've gone to bed early on Thursday. Yes, I always do. Did on Thursdays. It was Molly's night for going to the pictures with Mrs. Dimmick. And you, when you were sleeping, you heard your wife scream. That's right. I ran downstairs and... well, you know the rest. Yes. You found your wife lying outside the back door. Did you see anyone else? Only Mrs. Dimmick, when she came running out to find out what had happened. No one else. I see. Now, there's one other thing, Mr. Jackson. I hope you won't mind my mentioning it. You probably knew your wife was beaten about the head with some blunt instrument. We found a motor tire wrench under a cushion in the dining room. Can you account for it being there? Oh, it's nothing to do with this. I think I used it a few days ago, and Molly probably put it behind a cushion to keep the room tidy or something. One last question, sir, and then I'll leave you alone. Do you know any reason why anyone should want to murder your wife? No, I do not.
The local police were baffled by the case, and Scotland Yard in the person of Chief Inspector Collins was brought in. His search of the house, the Mumbles, for some clue of the murder yielded an anonymous letter. It read as follows. This is to tell you that we are watching you and will get you, you husband stealer, you robber of miners' money that would have fed starving children. When we get you, we will tar and feather you, and for every quid that you have taken from us, you will get another lump of tar and one more feather. We will show people you are as black outside as you are in. We will get you yet. Chief Inspector Collins examined this letter very carefully. Then he sent for Thomas Jackson.
You wanted me, Inspector? Yes, Mr. Jackson. I found this letter among my wife's belongings. I wondered if you would throw any light on it for me. Good Lord. Have you seen it before? No, I certainly haven't. Why, don't you see? The person who wrote this is probably the murderer. You were quite close to your wife, weren't you, Mr. Jackson? Yes. Doesn't it strike you as peculiar that you didn't show her this letter? Yes, it does. Well, perhaps you didn't want to worry me. Or perhaps she never received it. Never? But what do you mean? Perhaps it was written after her death, Mr. Jackson. Perhaps it was written by her murderer. I'm placing you under arrest, Mr. Jackson. I hereby charge you with the murder of your wife on the 4th day of February of this year.
What were the clues that led to this arrest? Blood on Jackson's clothes? No. The murder weapon in his possession? No. What was the incriminating evidence? The answer is that there was none. There was merely a mass of suspicion. Inspector Collins believed that Jackson had deliberately written a letter to detract attention for himself. He believed that Jackson had found his wife an encumbrance once her bank account declined, and that he had planned her murder step by step. Adding to the inspector's suspicions was the fact that Jackson was very slow about informing the police, and that when two neighbors came in the day after Mrs. Jackson had been taken to the hospital, he didn't say a word about her having been attacked. Strange behavior. But is strange behavior sufficient to hang a man? To answer that, we must go to Glamorgan Assizes at Swansea, July 1929, before Mr. Justice Wright. For the prosecution, Mr. Trevor Hunt, K.C.
Are you sure, Mr. Jackson, that when your wife returned, you did not have a quarrel?
I never spoke or did anything to my wife until I found her outside.
After you found your wife, why didn't you tell the police?
I didn't think.
What were you frightened of?
My wife had always been frightened. She was the type of woman...
Please answer the question and don't go off into a cloud of words. Why were you frightened?
I didn't know what had happened.
Is that the best answer you can give?
That is all I can say.
At the time you met your wife, you were thinking of going to Australia, were you not?
Yes?
What made you decide not to?
I hadn't enough money to pay for the fare and set up a business there.
What was your financial position when you married the deceased?
My money's my own affair. What has money to do with this business?
You will see in a moment. Did you on occasions get as indignant with your wife as you've just been with me?
I am not indignant. I was simply wondering about your manner. Think of what I've been through. 4 months in jail for nothing.
But did you ever display the same temper with your wife?
I never get out of temper.
Did you not think, when your wife's money had disappeared, that it would be good to be rid of her and her bad temper?
She was quick-tempered, but she was the most charming woman you could meet.
Do you think it charming of her to take a carving knife to you? You told us that she had done that in your statement.
Anyone would do that under the impulse of the moment. She never hurt me.
But you ran away.
That was only sensible.
Little new evidence was produced in court, but by the time the past exploits of Murray Jackson had been recounted, there was little sympathy left for the murdered woman. Mr. Justice Wright noticed this, and in his summing up, he warned the jury not to allow sentiment to influence them in their judgment.
Members of the jury, it seems that the theory of the prosecution is a most reasonable and rational one. I do not see how any other view of the nature of the attack is possible. Now, members of the jury...
This view of the prosecution, with which the judge concurred, was that Jackson had planned the murder of his wife, had started a quarrel with her when she returned from the pictures, and had killed her inside the house and carried her outside the back door. In view of Mrs. Dimmick's evidence that she had heard the scream very soon after Mrs. Jackson left her, it's difficult to believe that a quarrel, violent enough to result in murder, could have risen between Jackson and his wife in such a short space of time.
Gentlemen of the jury, it is also clear to me that if any stranger did murder this woman, it must have been the result of a deliberate scheme and of set purpose. I have heard no evidence which would indicate in any way that Mrs. Jackson had any enemies to do her harm. There is circumstantial evidence against the prisoner, which I venture to think very strong. There is no evidence of any secret enemy.
Mr. Justice Wright made it quite clear to the jury that he wanted them to return a verdict of guilty. But when they came back after an hour of deliberation, not one of them turned his eyes away from the prisoner, and the knowing ones in court knew that Thomas Jackson would be acquitted. Who killed Molly Bourne, the lady in distress? Such an attractive lady, so pretty, so full of life, and such a good companion. And when she liked you, she could give so much and take so little. For instance, Jackson, a man of little worth, to whom she remained a good and faithful wife. And Smith, a man of many good qualities, albeit weak, whom she tricked, blackmailed, and ruined. An extraordinary woman. Or was she so extraordinary? If a man, even a worthless man, gain a woman's love, that woman will, if necessary, sacrifice her life for him. But if a man, however devoted and generous, fail to arouse the tender emotion, then let him beware. And if I go on saying things about women, I'd better beware.